Good evening from the Horseshoe. It is week 2 for Ohio State, and it is week 2 of the Pregame Keys on the podcast. That is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Buckeyes hosting Western Michigan here in about 2-ish hours, depending on if you're catching it live when this drops, which is also a great time for us to be talking about the availability report for the Buckeyes, which is official and confirmed. And guess what? Cody Simon and Donovan Jackson are available. But guess what? That doesn't mean, Burn, that they're going to play.
Yeah, I would still actually bet that they don't, just based on how things went all week. I guess we'll see. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. Ohio State's objectives are the same. It would certainly be nice to have your leaders out there for an offensive line that struggled in the first quarter last week. And for a linebacker unit, you just want some stability. It'd be nice to have Cody out there as the block O and the leader of that group. So bottom line, though, Ohio State and Western Michigan should not come down to Cody Simon or Donovan Jackson. But if they're needed, they can play.
Yeah, I think especially we know Cody Simon was really pushing to play, and I'm not saying Donovan Jackson wasn't, but I think one was maybe closer a week ago than the other. We'll see exactly how they're operating throughout pregame warmups here shortly. Both of them went through it in the Horseshoe last week, and again, if they were not playing a MAC opponent, if not early first couple weeks of the season with an off week looming, you'd probably see both of them go. But it's been an opportunity there. We've talked all off season and then all week 1 and all of the fallout since then about the Ohio State offensive line. They played better as that game went along. Did they dominate the line of scrimmage in the first half against Akron? They did not. But Austin Sareveld, I think, played pretty well in place of Donovan Jackson. Tegra Shabola did a pretty good job in his first start. You saw Seth McLaughlin. Really, the interior of that group, I thought, handled themselves pretty well. So that means that my first key would be just seeing maybe a little bit more in the run blocking on the edge, whether that's Josh Simmons or Josh Fryer or different looks from the tight ends, or just stretching the field more to the boundary or horizontally. We'll see how that looks. But I think that's probably the jump from week 1 to week 2 where you look for it with or without Donovan Jackson.
Oh, that's the adage, right? We talked earlier. There's always the adages find a way to get brought back up. And if you do truly make the biggest leap between week 1 and week 2, that's going to be in the trenches. That's going to be on the offensive line. And it doesn't matter if it's Donovan Jackson, who should be better because he's played so many games over his career, or if it's the same lineup that you had last week, because now they've got a little continuity and they've played next to each other. So you should have an improvement either way. If you were the coach, and I'm just positing this, let's say, knowing that you have the off week coming up, would you be more inclined to play Donovan Jackson and Cody Simon, knowing that if there was a potential for a setback, you have the off week? Or are you more inclined to say, the off week's coming up, let's be 1,000% sure that you guys we're going to be ready for Marshall and the stretch run that starts at Michigan State at the end of the month?
Yeah, nobody, because of the, sensitive way that Ohio State has handled injury information in the last couple of years, we weren't able to get ask literally Ryan Day directly about a change in philosophy. But I don't think that this team, if we are to assume, which I think you and I can reasonably do, that Donovan Jackson and Cody Simon situations are of a similar nature, if not severity, to Jackson Smith and Jigba, that whole ordeal, I think, has changed a lot of the approach overall for Ohio State, even if they don't want to speak about it directly. So I would say no, if that decision was up to me. You use the maximum amount of time that you can. Ohio State is a 37.5-point favorite in this game. They have another week plus another week after that to get these guys much closer to 100%. I don't know where I would place them right now. They've continued to work out and be in pads and practice and go through stuff in Ohio Stadium. It's like they can't be that far off, but there's just no benefit in my mind to pushing it right now. Use this extra time that's afforded you with the off week coming. You still have a quote-unquote tune-up game with Marshall. If Donovan Jackson and Cody Simon need to work the rust off there, they still can, but then you have the Big Ten schedule looming after that. But I honestly don't think that there is any upside to bringing them back at this point, even for a quarter or 2 or 3 drives. Austin Sareveld can use those reps. Sonny Styles acquitted himself, I think, pretty well, getting the Mike linebacker, getting the headset communication, played solidly. That allows you Arvell Reese to get more reps. And opportunities there at linebacker. So no, I would continue on that tack.
I think I agree, but I do wonder, because you're dealing with 22-year-old men who are like desperate to get out here and play their game that they have been working for. Like sometimes you have to push back against the own player's desire for what's probably in their better interest. But we'll see. If they're healthy, then they should play. So if they're not healthy, then they should be on the report. So it's a weird catch-22, I guess.
Well, I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe they are ready to go, maybe they aren't, but they're not on the availability report regardless. neither is anybody else that's really of note. Obviously, the walk-ons like TC Caffey, Reed Stockdale, those guys are not available.
Devontae Armstrong and Jaden Bonsu are the other players that are unavailable for Ohio State. It was a total of 4 players. So coming out of training camp and then out of week 1, Ohio State's still pretty remarkably healthy, even though they've been monitoring the situation with 2 starters.
So moving on to my first key, and I'm going to probably be a broken record until this actually happens, but I need to see Ohio State come out of the gate on fire. And you cannot use the excuse that you used a week ago, which was, the offseason was there. It's a little hard to get going in week 1. This is week 2 now. You've got a night game. It's going to be a good energy in here. I think that you should be able to come out of the gates swinging. Western Michigan, you've seen what they have on film. You know who they are. They're going to come in probably feeling a little good about themselves, even though they lost a week ago. But I don't know why they always play this song when we're doing this, and it's so loud. So to me, it's just come out the gates on fire. I don't know if it's Will Howard maybe in the run game, but I just want to see some energy in that first drive or 2 from Ohio State. I want to see tempo, and I want to see dominance up front. So, it's sort of the same as yours, but to me, it's about tempo and pace and understanding that you are the better team. Go out there and just put it to bed early.
Here's what's interesting. For week 1, they did not have to turn the speakers up to the loudest possible volume. There was just a natural buzz going on in and around the stadium. It's not quite the same. And somebody is trying to manufacture that over the speakers right now. And I don't love it. Let it happen naturally. Everyone loves primetime games, right? Night games in the shoe. Let them do that. Let the fans bring the noise. Anyway, that's aside from the point. But the Buckeyes, to your point, they're going to have to bring that juice themselves as well to get this thing going. Everyone knows that they should win comfortably and easily.
I think that there's a point when this team, as talented as they are, needs to be the provider of the juice for the crowd and not the other way around, especially when you're playing a team like this. So last week, I was a little critical of the fans leaving at halftime up 17-3. If the team comes out and doesn't have any energy, I guess I'm not blaming the crowd if they don't have it themselves.
Okay. Yeah. I think that they will.
Yeah, the defense had a ton of it. It's an offensive issue, as we've talked about all week.
I think even if you look at it in that first quarter, the defense, it gets glossed over because they forced the 3 turnovers. They scored twice on defense. They let some things and some tackles go early on too. That's also why I'm only bringing up to say I don't think it was a huge deal that Ohio State started slow in week 1.
Right.
Now, if it becomes a trend, as you're saying, week after week after week, and we're asking, is this going to happen? Maybe we'll have a different conversation about what they're doing to, staying downtown or where. I don't know, what's causing it, what adjustments they need to make. We'll find out. That's the beauty of it. They're going to play week 2. They're looking to make some improvements and do things differently. We probably wouldn't have been having any of these conversations at all if the screen had been caught and he finished that off, because that was the best blocked screen, I think, in 5 years for Ohio State. So that's a matter of, even you're going to make mistakes in games. That's acceptable. Ryan Day's talked about that, as long as they're mistakes of aggression. So really, week 2 for me, for Ohio State, is about a clean game, eliminating some of these penalties, alignment, ball starts. The timing of the game becomes the hardest part of getting back in the flow after a long layup, and the urgency in a practice in a training camp. You want that to be at the same level, but it is not the same as having 100,000 people watching and playing a new opponent. So can they get some of the penalties and those things cleaned up, the execution things that weren't quite as sharp as they wanted early on? I think in the second half, Ohio State did a much better job of that. How much does that carry over now in the first half against Western Michigan?
Yeah, and I think if we're talking keys here, to me, Ohio State getting off the field 3 and out in their first couple defensive possessions or first couple defensive series is important. Western Michigan did a great job against Wisconsin, holding onto the ball. Just they only averaged 3.5 yards a carry, but they ran it 35 times. They have 2 of the MAC's best interior offensive linemen, 2 all MAC guys on the inside. They've got a 6-year quarterback in Hayden Wolf. They have veteran team. You don't want to give them any sort of ability to feel like they're going to slow Ohio State down or extend this game or shorten this game, to make them feel like, hey, we can get out of here and it can be a 17-3 game at half or anything like that. So the defense, I think it starts with Tyleik Williams, who played a really great game a week ago, but it was kind of quiet. It wasn't a game where he had the deflections or the forced fumbles or sacks or anything, but if you go back and watch the tape, he was dominant. So I want to see Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton dominate this game at the point of attack in the first quarter. To me, that's where the defense is going to really set the tone, because again, Western Michigan believes that they're good enough up front to to shorten this game. So get them off the field early, get the ball in the offense's hands, and then go aggressive.
So you pointed out, Chip Kelly talking about on Tuesday how much he was putting on himself to take the next step as the play caller for this team, that he didn't think it was perfect, and it wasn't. And he's never going to be satisfied. He's a coach. That's part of their nature. They're always looking to find improvements, way to get better from week to week. I want to see I'm not putting it on him. I think that it was by design a pretty limited playbook and game plan, because of so many new faces that are out there. But I want to see the next phase of that installation, if that's the way we're going to view a preseason stretch of the schedule for Ohio State. All due respect to Western Michigan or Akron or Marshall, but that's what this is for Ohio State. This is a preseason ramp up towards the Big Ten schedule. Michigan State, Iowa, and then Oregon right there. So what are the things that he wants to accomplish? I don't know. I've said it on 2 different occasions. I think that there's stuff with Emeka Egbuka and Brandon Ennis both as rushing threats on the perimeter and the RPO passing game that Ohio State didn't really get to last week. They could also take more shots than they did. Will Howard only threw 2 balls over 20 air yards last week against Akron. Which one of those is the priority? Because I don't really expect that it would be both. I don't think that the full arsenal is coming out in this game. No. But we're going to get a hint of which one Chip Kelly really wants to accomplish today, I think, pretty early.
Well, last week we saw it was a dedication to running the ball, getting the run game going, and it paid off in the second half. I think this week you should see the Buckeyes just be more aggressive with the passing game, more vertical, be more downfield, and get the tight ends involved. As I mentioned on the bold predictions on Friday, you have one of the country's best tight ends visiting today, Max Sutter from Illinois. 1 target for the tight end group out of 95 combined snaps a week ago was just not enough. You brought in Will Kazmarek to be a leader. You have a really talented pass catcher in G. Scott. Let's get those guys involved here. And when you can do that early, you can let Will Howard get a little comfort going, and that will open up the entire field for the Buckeyes in the run game and in the deep game and in the vertical passing game. So to me, the third key for me is offensive diversity and using the tight ends in the passing game and letting those guys get their mojo back.
What do you think about this windy weather, Berm?
Beautiful. Perfect day for football. This is gorgeous.
You can't get through the Keys without talking about the weather.
I mean, there's not a lot to talk about. Right now, it's 67 degrees as we get this done. It's going to be about 65 come kickoff. Should be in the high 50s by the time the game's over, but it's a beautiful day. It's going to be a little gusty. But it could be worse. You could be in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That game was like 55 degrees at kickoff today.
Not as nice up there?
Not as nice, apparently.
I wonder what else happened up there. I guess we'll find out later. But these have been the pregame keys. We're going to get back to it. We're going to have snap judgments.
If you were an NCAA 25 cover guy and you had 70 yards rushing in your first 2 games, would you wonder why you were on the cover of that game?
I think EA Sports is probably, did they put metrics for on-field success? Can they recoup some of the signing bonus?
I hope so.
Because I think he's the most overrated running back in the country, and it seems like that is playing out. But he's not playing in the horseshoe. Ohio State is.
Yeah.
Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, I think they're both pretty good, and they've got something to prove in the backfield for the Buckeyes as they get ready for week number 2 against Western Michigan. Again, snap judgments after the game. We'll have the notebook. We'll have all the full coverage coming on Sunday and Monday as we wrap this up whenever it gets to that point. But we hope you just enjoy it. It's coming. We only get a few months of these and a few opportunities every year to actually see real games. And the Buckeyes have a limited amount of opportunities to play them. So can't wait to cover it. Ohio State, Western Michigan is coming your way shortly. He's Burham, I'm Austin. Thanks so much for joining us for the pregame keys on the podcast. We'll talk to you after the game.